You are experiencing the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast.
It is May 26, 2026, and welcome to the Knuckleheads of Liberty, where we're bringing you the people in the organizations fighting for liberty around the country and in your region, and also news from a liberty perspective. And this time, the primaries are coming up here in California, and so we wanted to take one last crack at the gubernatorial debates. We covered a few topics a couple weeks ago, and we're going to try and cover about 5 topics again today. We're going to talk about home prices, the sort of insurance crisis they have going on here, issues with regulating social media, also single-payer health care, and I think what was the last issue we were going to hit? Well, I guess we'll get there when. Oh, and gosh, what was it? Well, anyways, we'll figure it out when we get there. Okay. Oh, climate change. That's it. Climate change. Democrats never forget about climate change. So we're going to talk about that as well. But before we do that, let me introduce you to our panel. Again, with us, we have Leon, the word Brathwaite, last word in Liberty. He is a retired engineer in the state of California. My name's Jason McPhee, and I'll be your host today. And so, we're going to try and cover this stuff because hopefully it'll inform some people maybe about some people's positions before this big debate, big primary vote that's coming up on the 2nd of June, I believe it is. And this is literally, there's a chance that it's possible a Republican could be on that final ballot. So there's a host of Democrats. And we also have 2 Republicans who are maybe potentially in the running. I mean, certainly one of them is. One of them is sort of starting to slip at this point, but we shall see. But before we get into any of that, let me have our quote of the day. We always try and have a Liberty quote of the day, something that's related to the show. And I really like this quote because I feel like it's indicative of what we've been experiencing here in California for about the last 20 years. We've had a Democrat monopoly running things here in California, and everything keeps getting worse and worse, and yet people keep voting for Democrats. And so I really like this quote. It is from Mark Twain, and it says, "It is easier to con a man than to convince him he has been conned." And I think that describes California to a T nowadays, because it doesn't matter how much money we lose on all these harebrained schemes, whether it's a bullet train to nowhere that doesn't look like it's ever going to be running, yet the money just keeps disappearing, or whether we keep dumping tens of billions of dollars into homelessness projects and the numbers of homeless keep growing. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is here in California. The Democrats seem to be doing it wrong, yet we keep electing them. So what is the problem here? Leon, what do you think the problem is?
Well, there's some deep psychological problem going on here in California. I have to believe that, because I can't think that any rational person will continue to live under the misery that the Democrats have brought to California, and continue to do so. I mean, when I first moved to California 35, 36 years ago, I mean, we had a Republican governor at the time, and so since then we have seen this gradual shift. We had statewide offices held by Republicans, but since my move here, we have shifted. Where there are how many statewide offices we have? Not a single one held by a Republican. The state have gone totally to the left, and we have gone with that have come a whole bunch of misery administered by the Democrats, and they keep winning. This is the problem. They keep winning. Now, there are people who say, well, they have rigged the system to make sure they can cheat whenever they feel like it, and they can always have a wonderful election outcome. But there is something going on here in this state. Maybe there are other states where the same thing is also true. But this phenomena of where the Democrats mess up, they raise all taxes, and people keep putting them back in office. There's a very similar parallel to this that is probably nationwide. It's the relationship between the Democratic Party and Black Americans since around 1935, 36 or so. In that, if you look at short history, go as far back as you want. Go back to the founding, where we had slavery, where we had the Civil War, where you have Reconstruction, then you had Jim Crow, then you have the Civil Rights era, and then you had and then you have the post-Civil Rights era. In any one of those eras that you can choose, you'll see the Democrats on the wrong side of history in terms of their relationship with Black Americans. Every single period. But yet, since 1930 or so, Blacks have been voting with overwhelming numbers for the Democrats, and they continue to do so. And there are people.
What year did you say? You said 1960 or 1930? Because I would
around 1930. Because I think it was the 1936 presidential election when when Blacks started voting overwhelmingly for the Democrats.
Ah, wow. Okay.
And
I would have thought it was with the Voting Rights Act. I didn't realize it was that.
No, it was before the vote. Believe it or not. Now the Voting Rights Act did open up a lot more areas where Blacks were voting more freely. The Voting Rights Act did do that, and Lyndon Johnson, Mr. Lyndon
Great
Johnson,
Society, right? That great society that has absolutely nuked the Black community.
Look at the inner cities of America. Yeah. That is straight out of. I mean, in the 1960s, all of the inner cities that we see right now today, they were relatively good, relatively nice areas to live in. Detroit and Chicago and all these places. But look at the condition of these places. Okay, and a lot of Blacks live in these cities. Some of them are majority Black, but yet we see this overwhelming vote for the Democrats, and it's hard to explain. You cannot look at history and say, well, the Democrats have really been good to Black Americans. You cannot look at history and reasonably or rationally come to that conclusion. But yet, Blacks continue to vote for the Democrats. So what is going on in California in terms of where the Democrats are now control the entirety of the state? For the most part, there are a few Republicans here and there. You're seeing the very same phenomena. These people raise our taxes. They bring us all sorts of misery. People are leaving the state in droves. But yet, the majority of voters within the state keep giving their votes to the Democrats. It's insane. It's almost insane. They're bringing nothing but misery to the state. And it's keep going on and on. So Mark Twain, is Mark Twain we're talking about? Yes.
Oh, yes.
Mark Twain is absolutely correct. No matter, it's so very easy. I mean, we can't even convince people that this Democratic Party and their whole agenda is a big con. We can't convince them of that. Okay? So they have conned us. Well, I'll say them. I don't want to be part of that. They have conned them, and then we can't even convince them that they've been conned. And this is the history of the Democratic Party. They have nice and fancy words, but they have no substance behind it.
I was going to say too, this issue of being conned and not being able to convince somebody they've been conned also feels very much like what we talk about when we talk about cults and people, trying to deprogram people out of a cult, right?
Exactly.
I mean, it's really hard to get somebody out of a cult because, they've got so much invested in it that they just can't convince themselves to be skeptical about what they're seeing. And of course, the cult loads it in that direction. So it's really hard to resist too once you're in it, because you wind up potentially losing your friends and network of people that you rely on. And so nobody wants to say that they've been conned, right? Most people, because they other people can be conned. I could never be conned, right? That's the problem. And it's funny too, because I think that's what a lot of con men really rely on, and a lot of these stupid products that you see people buying that don't make any sense, right? They're fly-by-night things that disappear, and it's really hard for somebody to come around and complain, because then they have to admit to somebody else that they fell for.
They fell for some bit of garbage. Exactly.
Yeah.
This is And this is apparently what's happening with our votes, that we keep giving these people our votes, and we'll not settle upon ourselves. This has been a big con game going on by the Democrats in this state. Now, I don't want the Republicans to have a monopoly upon our votes in here or in any state. I don't want that. I want good competitive elections. That's what I really want. That's what I think the founders probably intended, is to have good competitive elections. But what's going on in California here is a national disgrace, quite frankly. It really is. Because
and as a libertarian, I mean, I also don't want to see Republicans, have a monopoly on any of this stuff either. I'd love to see some libertarians win. But that said, we've had like a 20-year monopoly of the Democrats, and we need something to break that up,
without a doubt.
Well, we have kind of an interesting process here now in California, since I think Schwarzenegger was in office. I'm pretty sure he was the one responsible for what they call this jungle primary system.
Mm-hmm.
And so the idea was to try to not get extreme people. So you just open up the primary completely, and then you just take the top two. And so, you think, okay, well, how many people are running? Is it, well, we got maybe 4 or 5 people running, 6 people. Well, let me show you the ballot here so you can kind of understand what we're talking about. This is the list of governors. Oh, but wait, there's more. That is the list of people you can vote for. And if that wasn't enough, in this other corner here, there is a write-in section right there. Just in case that didn't cover everybody for you.
Everybody,
people in. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here, where we just got a whole lot of people, and there was a little bit of hope earlier on, about a month ago, that the 2 Republicans were both kind of only splitting the Republican vote, but there was like 7 or 8 Democrats splitting the Democrat vote. But unfortunately, that's starting to consolidate now a little bit for the Democrats. They're still not out of the woods, but it's looking a lot better for them now. So let me bring in the latest polling numbers. I think I'm not 100% sure. I've seen different things on social media. This was May 13th, so this one's a little bit stale. I think I've heard that Steve Hilton has moved back into the lead again, but this poll had Xavier Becerra, or Javier, I can't even remember his first name now.
I think it's Javier Becerra.
Javier Becerra. Okay, yeah. So it's Javier Becerra is now the well, at least in this poll, he was at 19%. So he had overtaken Steve Hilton, but I think Steve Hilton actually might be ahead of him now. But Steve Hilton is the Republican, who is the leading Republican in the race. Then you have Tom Steyer is about in the 3rd position. And then you had Chad Bianco, which was the next Republican. And then you had a whole host of Democrats following that, to the point where, they were having to boot some Democrats off the stage at some point because there was just too many Democrats running. And in fact, it gave us one of the oddest things that has ever happened, I think, in a primary, where we literally had a debate where they said, hey, this is not inclusive enough, because it just turned out by the polling that Javier Becerra was not in the top group at that point. And so you had Katie Porter, Tom Steyer, and Mahan, the guy who's running from San Jose. So there's 3 white people running against 2 Republican white people. And I'm not sure if there was another white person somewhere in the mix there for Democrats or not. But the bottom line is no people of color, as the Democrats love to refer to them as, were in the mix. And so they said, this is not an inclusive debate. And so they canceled it. They canceled the debate, like I think on the day of or the day before or something. They canceled the debate. So it's just absolutely, kind of nutso stuff going on. And it's led to statements like this one right here. This is literally how they're describing themselves now in some of these debates as they open.
Welcome inside Bridges Auditorium. Pomona College, thank you for hosting this debate. Give yourselves another big round of applause.
Thanks to everyone in our audience, students, faculty, administrators, alumni, guests, and thanks to all of our candidates, all 8 of you on stage tonight, the most inclusive debate of the election.
The most inclusive debate.
You see, Jason, they fix the problem. They fix the problem. They got you white devils in your you white devils in your place, and they got some people of color in there just to make it so very inclusive. I am so amazed and I'm proud of this outcome. You know what I'm saying? Okay, now that I've fixed the white devil problem, God Lord.
Well, this gave us a problem when we were starting to look at trying to talk about some of these debates ourselves, because then the problem becomes, well, if there's 6, 7, 8 Democrats, how do you decide? I mean, how do you run a review of a debate, because you can't listen to every single one of them, right? And that's
Exactly.
the problem. So what we've done, at least in our review, is we've taken the top 3 and tried to spread the answers out among the top 3 Democrats and among the top 2 Republicans in order to sort of get a flavor. So we're only going to hear from Javier Becerra, Tom Steyer, and Katie Porter on the Democrat side, just because you got to stop it somewhere. Otherwise, and the sad thing is, I actually think Villagrosa and Mahan, those 2 actually sound like the least creepy of the Democrats, but they're polling at the bottom, for the Democrats. So anyways, but we're not going to hear from them because Democrats don't want to vote for the least creepy Democrat.
Well, you know how it is in California. The weirdos always win, right? Isn't that what it is?
Yeah. Yeah. So if you're shocked by any of the answers these people give, just realize that's what flies in California.
Right. Exactly.
So, but anyway, so, we're going to cover a lot of varied topics, and, but just so people realize, I mean, when we talk about kind of the distress that California is under, I mean, we got refineries that are, bailing out of the state, and we're probably going to have gas shortages. We got a homelessness crisis going on in this state. We got government that hands out drugs to promote the homelessness crisis in the state. In fact, we even have mayor of Los Angeles, wants to make sure that she's, cleaning the teeth, I guess, of all the homeless drug addicts out there. You can't have a meth head with a meth smile.
Not at all. I wish she will volunteer. She'll volunteer to do the actual cleaning herself.
Yeah. But it's just one thing after another, and then of course we have the issue of, and we'll talk about this one a little bit during the thing tonight, but this idea of healthcare services, and in particular funding illegal immigrants on healthcare. That's one of the Democrat causes, and we'll talk a little bit about some of these issues that have been driving insurance companies out of the state, and some of that is this fire stuff that's just out of control, and the crime. We actually passed a proposition to try to get crime under control, and Governor Newsom wouldn't fund it. That's where his priorities are. So and then of course we have issues of fraud and a big exodus of people just leaving the state. So it's kind of one thing after another. And of course, those Pacific Palisades fires, as we said, sort of driving these insurance companies out of the state. So we're going to talk about a lot of those things as we go through. But, when we're talking about the 3 candidates, let's review real quick who these 3 are. Javier Becerra, Tom Steyer, and Katie Porter. So here's a quick video just so you can get to know them before we dive into this.
Get ready. You're going to be safe. President Biden and Vice President Harris promised when they got into office that they were going to lower the cost of healthcare for more Americans with better benefits. Check, check, check. That's what happens when you have real leadership.
Well, we can see what Becerra thinks good leadership is. But what about Steyer? I mean, after all, he hasn't been a politician before. I think he was asked recently how he thought Governor Gavin Newsom did. Let's hear his response.
What grade would you give Governor Gavin Newsom for the last 2 terms? I don't know.
You won't give us a grade. You won't grade him?
No, I haven't followed it closely enough to give him a grade.
Okay.
So according to Steyer, who wants to be our governor, he hasn't even been following what's been going on here in California. But I do hear, it sounds like we have one other that needs to chime in here as well.
Get out of my fucking shot.
Okay, so that's the Democrat gems that we have in the lead here. So, and the way the state usually votes, one of them will most likely, will certainly be, it looks like now, in the primary, or I mean in the runoff rather, from the primary, because none of these people are going to get 50% to avoid a runoff. Very likely, one of them will also go on to win the final thing. But we can always hope here, so that at least one of these Republicans will get into the runoff, and maybe people will finally change their tune here in California. It is getting pretty dire.
It is. It is. Believe me.
Well, with in the spirit of inclusiveness too, one of the things we did in the last time when we hit a few of the topics from the debate, we as we said before, Gavin Newsom is going to be out of a job here at the end of the year, and one of the skills everybody has noticed about him is he is really good with his hand speak, and this is something that maybe there's a future in this for him, maybe as a signer or something. Let's give you a little example of this, okay? So just imagine this is sign language from Gavin Newsom. I don't know. That looks pretty creepy, Leon. That's skills there.
It look like he's trying to dance, man, and he's doing a very poor job of it.
Yeah. So, anyways, that was kind of nuts. But last time, so we used some of his footage of just him doing that as hey, what would it be like if you were a signer? Well, this time we thought, it was hard to judge. So now we decided, well, Gavin Newsom is kind of famous for having these signers in on a lot of his talks, as many of the state Democrats are. And so here's an example of that. And we figured, well, what if we just let the two of them compete throughout the whole thing to see which is the best signer? So here's an example of Gavin Newsom with one of his own signers.
Thank you, Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Thank you for her leadership, making sure that those dollars were here, the $1.5 billion that the state will receive. We're going to get those applications out and done before, we hope, March 15th, but the bills that I'll sign require.
I'm not sure who was using their hands more, signer or Newsom, but maybe as we go through the debate, we know how inclusive every Democrat wants to be, so we're going to use that in every Democrat's responses. They're going to get the Newsom treatment. See what that does for them. Okay,
they're very inclusive as long as you don't disagree with them.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's get to the debate on home prices, because home prices here have gotten kind of out of hand. I think in Sacramento it's still kind of reasonable, around, I think the median price is maybe somewhere between $500,000 and $600,000 for a house. And I can't believe I'm saying that. That's a reasonable median price. But in a lot of the bigger cities here in California, it's around $1 million. Is the median. Yeah, so this is kind of nuts. So let's hear a little bit about that issue from our debate candidates here.
The median home price in California right now is $900,000.
This is the question. What is your plan to lower the cost of housing?
So on this topic, we're going to hear from Steve Hilton on the Republican side and Katie Porter on the Democrat side.
Mr. Hilton, same question to you. You have 60 seconds.
Well, if San Jose is the template for housing affordability in California, God help us, it was just rated the least affordable city for housing in the world. That is completely the wrong answer. The right answer is my plan, which was the first plan that I put forward in this campaign. Number one, we have to end this outrageous hidden tax on housing. They call it impact fees. It can add up to 20% to the cost of a home. Secondly, we have to reduce the extreme environmental regulations that make it 3 or 4 times as expensive to build the exact same home in California as in neighboring states. Number 3, we have to end the exploitative union lawsuits that are filed to block housing that extract project labor agreements that make the cost so much higher. And number 4, we have to end the war on single-family homes so that we can build the housing we need for young families. We need more starter homes in California.
Now let's hear from Katie Porter.
Porter, same question to you. What is your plan to lower the cost of housing? You have 60 seconds.
Housing is personal to me. I've sat across from thousands of Californians who are facing eviction or foreclosure. When I served the state of California for 3 years under then Attorney General, now former Vice President Kamala Harris, and I held the big banks' feet to the fire for predatory lending. I've also questioned CEOs of big banks about how the huge slice that housing takes out of their paycheck. Housing has been my #1 issue since I launched this race, and I have the deepest background in housing policy of any candidate on this stage. The key is to build faster. If we built at the same speed in California as states like Colorado, we could take 10 or 20% off the cost of housing. That's real money back in families' pockets. It's not a couple bucks, it's hundreds of dollars. I just want to comment, Mr. Becerra, you have all these lovely plans, but there are never any numbers, any revenue plan, any details, anything that pushes on the status quo. It's just all do, but the how, the why, the how much, it's all missing.
Okay, well, Leon, what did you think on their answers on housing?
Well, I mean, these idiots, except Steve Hilton, surely is not addressing the issue. Okay, Steve Hilton laid out a set of things. A lot of it is focused upon the insane environmental regulations that go into any kind of housing development, and nobody. I mean, I say only a limited amount of people want to continue developing in California. I mean, if we're gonna lower housing prices, obviously we have to increase supply. Okay, because the demand is still there, but the supply is a problem, and the government, which with their environmental damn nonsense, is making it so expensive to build in California, and so supply is certainly not keeping up with demand, and people are rushing to the border looking for better places to build. Some people are taking their dollars out. People are leaving the state because things are just so artificially expensive here in California. Home prices are outrageous, quite frankly. I mean, for people who are owners of homes, it's probably a nice thing, right? And stuff like that. But I worry about my children. Will they be able to buy homes when they're ready to do so? Well, both of them don't live in California anymore. One of them specifically left California because of the problems here in the state. But the problem is California is become a crap hole of environmental regulations and a bunch of idiots who think they're doing good when they are not.
Yeah. And in fairness to Katie Porter, at least she seemed to realize that we needed to increase the speed, but this just isn't what we're seeing from Democrats in practice. I mean, they just had this catastrophic fire in the Palisades, and we've talked about it several times on our show. After a year, they had less than 10 houses rebuilt.
Imagine that,
I mean, this is the speed that, this stuff happens. And of course, if there's all kinds of ways that people can constantly push back on developers and builders from being able to build anything, of course you're going to have a shortage. And anybody who understands anything about economics, if demand is increasing and supply isn't keeping up with it, the price is going to go up. And that's just that's an inevitable law pretty much in economics there. So I just this is this is nuts. They seem to understand that we don't have enough homes, but they don't seem to understand how to get more homes.
Talking about this state and its regulation.
Oh, by the way, sorry if you're watching too. I forgot we had the break from public access, so you have to catch the rest of the show online if you're watching us on public access. I don't know if this will get edited in at the right time or not, but anyways, there we go. So go ahead, Leon. Sorry, I had to catch you off.
Yeah, if you want to look at the insanity of what go on here in California, if you go back to you just raised the issue about the Pacific Palisades fire. That guy who's running for mayor of Los Angeles is Spencer Pratt. His home was burned down during the fire, and he has a trailer in front of his home. I don't think he actually lives there. He lives in a hotel somewhere in Bel Air or someplace like that. But somebody did some digging and found out that, well, he's not really living in the trailer. He and his family is in a hotel in Bel Air, somewhere in Southern California. You know what the media and the Democrats are complaining about? You know what they're criticizing Spencer Pratt for? They're criticizing him for living in a hotel and not living in the trailer when the man's home was burned down. They don't talk about the incompetence that caused that to happen. No, we don't have to talk about that. We just have to talk about Spencer Pratt living in a hotel rather than living in a trailer in front of his home. My God, what's wrong with these people? This is the kind of nonsense that goes on here in the state. It's been, like you said, it's been a year now, more than a year now, and the man can't get his home rebuilt yet. But the thing they're going to find to criticize, oh, you should be living in a trailer. Oh, my God, you should be living in a trailer. That will show how down to earth you are, how wonderful you are. My God.
I want to bring us back to that quote that we started the show for, and it is easier to con a man than to convince him he's been conned, right? And it's funny because, I mean, essentially the Democrats are trying to point to Spencer Pratt and say, don't listen to that man. He's a con man. I mean, they've done the biggest con of all. I mean, they fell down on the job of even preventing the fires in the first place.
Right.
They wiped out all these homes. And then he told people that, hey, you're going to have your homes back in no time. I mean, we had Karen Bass there in that press conference with Donald Trump, and he was pushing out on this, saying, hey, look, I get these homes going again in no time. I want to get them people out there working on them and everything else. And then she promised that, yeah, we'll get them going, and it'll be months, essentially. Well, I guess she meant like, hundreds of months because we haven't got much done over there in Los Angeles yet. And then their response is to point to the person who's criticizing them and say, look, it's a con man.
Yeah, of course. Yeah,
don't let him con you.
Yeah.
It's just absolutely nuts, right?
Unbelievable.
Yeah. Well, anyways, that's the first topic. And by the way, did you? I don't know if you caught Gavin Newsom yet competing with his signer, see which was best. But I don't know. I think it's a tight race so far. Any thoughts, Leon?
Very tight. Very tight.
Okay. Let's go on to the next one. We'll see if Gavin has a chance to separate himself at all from his signer. and to see if he has a future in that. The next will be a related issue, and it's about homeowners insurance. And so, of course, that's related to all the risk that's happened here in California, right, with fires and everything else. So let's hear two of the candidates debating that.
Many Californians cannot get home insurance anymore, or their premiums have skyrocketed. Insurance companies blame wildfire risk and catastrophic losses. Many have left the state. California's FAIR Plan, a last resort option, is being swamped and is becoming a crisis for the state.
So in this one, we're going to hear from Chad Bianco on the Republican side and Javier Becerra on the Democrat side.
Mr. Bianco, this round begins with you. What is your plan to attract private insurance companies back to California? You have 60 seconds.
Again, we're going to be honest about the problem. The problem is our California state government, is our California state regulations that are affecting the insurance companies. Various regulations affecting the insurance companies, but particularly, they told us why they were leaving. They told Governor Newsom for 5 years in a row that they were going to leave if he did not change the environmental policies and protections that prevented our fire agencies from creating defensible space around our homes, our cities, and our buildings. They told him they were going to lose cities and they couldn't afford to cover it, so they were going to have to leave. So the answer is remove the regulations, let the fire agencies create that defensible space. We are being absolutely controlled by environmental activism in this state that runs every single regulatory board. And as governor, I will remove that special interest from California state government.
Now let's hear from Javier Becerra.
I won't be as lenient as some of the responses you've heard. I believe that it's time that we get behind the curtain and find out how these insurance companies are operating, because there are still people in Altadena and Pacific Palisades who have not been paid on their claims from back in January 2025. That is ridiculous. Every month they paid their premiums. Some people had never filed a claim, yet when they finally filed this claim for these wildfires, they still can't get an answer to the question, how much they get and when they'll get it. That is not right. We should hold their feet to the fire. I'll make sure that we take on all the issues of wildfire mitigation. Sure, you have to harden your home. We have to make sure we don't have developers building in high-risk areas. We'll do all those things. But first and foremost, insurers owe those consumers, those people who paid their premiums responses. They paid their premiums. They are owed a response on their claims. It's ridiculous that people have had to wait more than a year. That is not the way you treat a customer.
Okay, well, we've heard Bianco and Becerra. What did you think?
Well, of course, Bianco has the correct. The correct. I mean, I don't know if he have everything lined up properly, but he certainly have the right the right narrative in terms of dealing with the problem. It's just all it is insane regulations that are forcing too much risk upon insurance companies. Now, if you look to Becerra, of course, here we go again. There's all those dirty insurance companies. They're making too much money. They're trying to rip off people. That's his message. That's the damn nonsense the Democrats always talk. You look at the same thing with the oil companies. As soon as they hear they pass some stupid ass regulation and it end up costing us at the pump, oh, it's those greedy oil companies. Those greedy oil companies. That's all we hear. Now we have it now. Those greedy insurance companies. Those greedy insurance companies. This is a bunch of nonsense. Regulations, all these irrational regulations are killing us in the state. All these environmental activists, they are not really activists. They are a bunch of lunatics. All these lunatics, environmental lunatics, are forcing people into very difficult situations. And this is why the insurance companies cannot function here within the state. The regulations are changing and changing all the time. And it's always placed more risk upon the insurance companies. How much do you think they're going to take? Of course they're going to leave. Of course they're going to leave. That's exactly what is happening. And now you want to blame the insurance companies for leaving, for protecting their assets by leaving the state? This is ridiculous.
Well, and this is one of the problems too. Like Javier Becerra sounds like, a central planner. I mean, he's saying we're going to harden the homes. We're going to do this, that, and the other thing, create the defensible spaces and things like that. But the problem is that government has supposed to have been doing that on public lands already. That's their job, and they haven't been doing it, which is exactly why these fires get so out of control and spread so fast. But part of the other issue is here too, when he says you're going to force people to harden their homes. Well, that's what you want the price signal from insurance to do, right? I mean, you want insurance to look at somebody's home and say, okay, this is what we see as risk. And if you can reduce that risk, then we can reduce the price, right?
Exactly.
I mean, that's exactly the way you want this to go back and forth. You don't want it to be, oh, don't worry, our governor is going to make regulations to tell people how to protect their home, and then we're going to tell the insurance companies what they can charge. Right? I mean, it's like they're trying to control everything, and they're doing a terrible job of the whole thing, right? Just let the market and the price system work. That's how you have to handle these things if you want, if you want your economy to grow. Yeah. So
the government has an unbroken record of doing one thing and doing one thing very efficiently. Is nothing but bringing misery to its constituency. That's what they do, and that's what they do very well. They have an unbroken record of doing this thing. Okay? And you're right. Let's get all of these things out of the hands of government and put it into the marketplace where price signals can dictate action in that marketplace. That's all we need.
And quite frankly, there are some places that are going to be risky no matter what to build your home in.
Sure.
And that's what you want insurance to tell you, right? Is that, you go to look at getting your house insured so that you can protect this loan or whatever that you're taking. And they're going to tell you, hey, stupid, that's a bad idea to build out there. If you want to do it, this is the price you're going to pay.
This wasn't going to cost you. Exactly.
Yeah. And the answer isn't to run to government to force the insurance company to try to charge less. The answer is to say, oh, well, how can we reduce the risk? And if that means building in a less risky place, then that's what you do, right? You don't sit there and just force it. And I mean, that's the whole point, right? Is that people pay the cost of their decisions. That's what you want to see happen. And insurance is supposed to be a way that people can price that. And when you just keep having government jump in, it messes up the whole thing. So anyway, so that's two topics. So let's see, what's the next topic we're going to hit here? Okay, so here is a issue where we had a recent court decision that came down on social media, and I guess Meta and YouTube were sued because the people were claiming that their what do you call those things? Their apps were sitting there and I guess having a bad influence on kids. And so let's hear a little bit about what a couple of the gubernatorial candidates think about that.
And that is social media and our children. A California jury found Meta and Google negligent, ordering them to pay damages for designing addictive social media that contributed to mental health issues. Would you support a law that bans social media usage for kids under 16 years of age?
On this one, we're going to hear from Tom Steyer on the Democrat side and Chad Bianco on the Republican side.
Yes, I would. I've said that publicly. I think it's been clear for a long time that young people have significant mental health issues as a result of social media. And we have counted on the companies to police themselves, and that has definitely failed. And let me say that as AI is here, artificial intelligence, that is something else which very much threatens the safety and health of our children. And it's going to be, that is something which absolutely threatens them. And young people are addicted to their artificial intelligent friends more than their real friends. And so we are going to have to regulate these companies and have the courage to do it.
Mr. Steyer.
Now let's hear from Chad Bianco.
Thank you. Mr. Bianco, would you support a law that bans social media usage for kids under 16? You have 30 seconds.
No, that's up to their parents. I think it's interesting that drugs create mental illness too. And yet California Democrats have made drugs legal in California. But now we're going to ban social media because it creates a mental health issue for kids under 16. We know it creates mental health issues for adults. Social media is not a good thing for us to be spending 12 hours a day on, but it is up to parents what they want to do with their kids. It's not up to the government to tell them what their kids are going to do. And I agree there are far too many educational benefits to these platforms than there are dangers, but it's up to parents.
All right.
And, I don't know, Leon, my thought, I mean, clearly there's a lot of uncertainties about this. A lot of people feel like they don't quite understand everything that's going on with a lot of these apps and platforms. But I don't know how taking it out of the parents' hands and placing it in somebody in the government's hands, like a Joe Biden or a Donald Trump, is going to solve that problem for you, right? I'm not sure either of those guys is going to have the right answer compared to you, the parent, right? What's your thoughts on this one?
Well, a distant government, whether it's based in Sacramento or based in Washington, D.C., can never do a better job than the parents themselves. And this is what California is doing on and on again. They're trying to take these critical decisions out of the hands of parents and put it in the hands of government and telling us the government is going to do a better job of managing whatever the issue is. But we know that have never happened, okay? That have never, ever happened. And these idiots can't even talk about the mental problems that they are creating by trying to change, tell little kids in school, well, you could be a boy if you were born a girl, or you could be a girl if you were born a boy. That creates a lot of mental health problems. Notice they don't talk about that. But Chad Bianco, I think, answered it correctly. This is a matter for the parents. It does not matter what the government says about these things, because they never have the correct answer, because they have this one size fit all. Okay, we're just gonna put this shoe on your foot, and whether your foot is a size 10 or a size 5, we're going to put a size 7 right in there, and everything is going to be nice and wonderful. This is the damn nonsense of letting government take charge of any issue in our lives. This has to stay in the hands of parents. Okay, maybe you could argue that maybe parents is not doing a good enough job, whatever you want to argue. But the fact of the matter is, it will always be better for parents to handle issues such as these. I mean, yes, it is true that there are some adverse effects of using too much, having too much social media. But there are some very good things from social media also. I mean, there are a lot of educational benefits, as was pointed out in the media. But I don't think the answer is to take away the power of parents and give it to the government, some distant government, or it might end up with that Jankowitz woman thinking supercalifragilistic. I'm going to run your life into the ground.
Nina Jankowitz.
Yeah, whatever the hell her name was. Yes, that's not the answer. It will never be the answer. Government need to keep their hands to themselves. Okay, really and truly. I wish half of the government will go away. Quite frankly, they're totally useless. So we don't need to give them any more powers.
Well, and beyond the issue too of just assuming that government has the right answer, which oftentimes it doesn't, and especially like what you talked about with the transing the kids law, where no, don't worry, government knows about your child's mental health better than you do. And if we have a conversation with your child at school, we may decide not to tell you about it. That's literally the way the law is in California, right? I mean, it's absolutely nuts. But the other issue that I think a lot of people miss is when government gets really big, people assume government is looking out for you on everything. And sometimes there's big gaping holes where government isn't looking out for you. I mean, a lot of people think maybe government is looking out to make sure that some social media company maybe isn't doing something to take advantage of you, when in reality, government is probably not doing a lot of the things you imagine they're doing. I mean, it's almost like having faith in the mighty GOV is looking out there over you, to make sure nothing bad happens to you. And a lot of times, that government is truly not it's more of a metaphysical belief than a real belief, So so anyways, I think, and that's a problem, because I think just a lot of people make bad decisions just assuming that government is a safety net for them. So
indeed.
Yeah.
I don't think our lives, the quality of our lives will be improved by putting more things into the hands of government rather than leaving it in the hands of parents.
Okay, well, another topic that we managed to pull from the debates was related to climate change. And these were two closely related questions, but I think they're both addressing the same basic issue in a way on, the government's role with disasters and climate change. So let's get into this one.
And talk a little bit about wildfires and natural disasters, drought and extreme heat, which most scientists agree is made worse by climate change, have led to a surge in catastrophic wildfires across the state in the last 10 years alone. That includes two of the most destructive fires right here in Southern California. We also live in earthquake country. What are the first three things that you would do if you were governor and a natural disaster were to strike?
What we're going to hear now is two related answers to the question of natural disasters and climate change. So we're going to hear from Chad Bianco and Tom Steyer.
Bianco, the flames are rising and the winds are blowing. What are the first three things you would do as governor?
Well, that's too late by then. That's what we don't want. Why are we talking about after instead of the root causes? The root causes were not because of climate change. The root causes, ask anyone, ask the insurance companies. They told Newsom for 5 years that this was going to happen because of failed environmental activism policies that do not allow the clearing of brush and the fuel for these fires before they take over cities. This is 100% done by failed policies in California. The Palisades fire.
The question, sir, is what are you going to do today? We're sitting in Claremont on the base of the San Gabriel Mountains. If a fire breaks out tonight,
he doesn't have any idea. He doesn't know what to do. Sir, I'll answer the question.
I've been protecting you for my entire career from policies that you have made, that every single one of you have made, that I have suffered the consequences while I've been trying to keep them safe, working hand in hand with the fire department for 33 years. And you know who's not being asked? The fire department, because the fire department will tell you, CAL FIRE and every city and state agency will tell you that it is government policies that do not allow them to fix before in the off season. And
I can answer that question.
Thank you, Mr. Bianco. Mr. Mahan, what are your
Now let's hear from Tom Steyer.
Mr. Steyer, since they brought up insurance, you had backed the Affordable Insurance and Climate Recovery Act, which authorized the state attorney general to sue fossil fuel companies for damages linked to climate disasters to help blunt rising insurance costs. But that initiative actually failed last week in the Senate Insurance Committee. So how would you as governor advance that? You have 45 seconds.
Advance what?
The Insurance and Climate Recovery Act that you backed.
Okay, so let's be clear. The oil companies have been polluting and knowingly polluting for 45 years. It has caused great damage to the people of California. In fact, it is a reason we're getting warm, and it is a reason we've had these fires that have dramatically hurt people
so
in
they were
Altadena
causing
and
great
Pacific
damage
Palisades.
while you were investing in them?
Excuse me?
So the fossil fuel companies were causing great damage while you were investing in them?
And so it is time that that act which I was pushing is the idea that they should pay back for polluting. In environmentalism, I have 3 real rules. Number 1 is polluter pays. It's absolutely critical that if people are going to pollute and damage the environment and cause harm to their neighbors, they pay. 2, we have to include environmental justice in every single environmental rule. And 3rd is we need to start to deploy all of the clean energy stuff that's cheaper now and get us back to the front of the world in leading it. It's true the fossil fuel companies are still providing gasoline to us at inflated prices. We need to make them pay for the costs that they have had, including all the houses that burned down.
Thank you, Mr.
And the insurance costs that people are paying to insure those houses.
Thank you, Mr.
So it seemed like Tom Steyer was doing as much hand waving about the whole climate thing as Governor Newsom was doing down there in the corner. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know, what were your thoughts here, Leon?
Well, I mean, I have on a one-man crusade since the climate debate got hot. You know, the climate debate got hotter than the climate itself. You know, and these people and this nonsense about climate change. Well, first of all, let's be clear, okay? Climate change has been an ongoing process since the beginning of time. If you believe in the Bible, you could find quote unquote climate change in the Bible. Okay, it's been an ongoing thing. And there's no evidence that anything is happening more frequently or anything is the place is hotter or anything like that. The climate, the earth have been hotter, the earth have been cooler. Those same idiots who telling us right now, oh, this warming is really causing problems. Some of them were involved in the 1970s when they were talking about the coming ice age. Go look at the cover, I think it was Newsweek or Time Magazine, one of them, where it says the coming ice age. I think it was April 1974 or something like that. But the fact of the matter is...
Well, and let me just say too, Leon, that the IPCC lately, which is the intergovernmental panel on, I guess, climate change, has backed away from their most dire predictions lately. This is a New York Times article about that, and you're not really seeing it a lot talked about in the news, which is part of the whole problem about all this. It does feel like the science is not being dealt with very scientifically. Yes, you know. I mean, it is something. I mean, there is some truth in the sense that, look, you know, CO2 is a greenhouse gas. If we didn't have any atmosphere, all that sunlight would bounce right back into space, and the Earth would be quite cold. Yes. But the issue is what impact is it having? And I mean, it seems to be a lot of, you know, Greta Thunbergs in lab coats running around and telling us that the sky is falling, and it's hard to tease out how much true science there is in a lot of this stuff. And we really saw that with COVID, right? Where all of these people who claim to be top scientists were just saying things that we found out later had no basis, like 6 feet of separation, like shutting down the schools, right? Which
wearing the mask. Wearing the mask, there's no science behind that.
The efficacy of a stupid little mask that had no protocols, just stuff the mask on your face, right? In fact, you had Fauci that was telling us, well, 2 masks are better than 1. I'm sorry, there's no standard protocol in a laboratory where you put on a second, you know, you're putting on a second and third mask. I mean, that's just nuts. You know, and that should have been a clue to a lot of people. But the idea that government is doing a lot of these crazy things, that should kind of ring a lot of people's alarm bells, their skeptical alarm bells of, you know, how much of this is real and how much of it isn't. And unfortunately, I think it's because government has gotten too involved, and that's why we've gotten into this mess. Anyway, sorry, Leon. I just wanted to mention that there was
cool. Well, obviously, I believe the IPC did not go far enough in their walk back. Okay, because they did walk back the more extreme outcomes that they have been talking about for quite a number of years. They've been talking about that as one of the possible outcomes. You know the thing about how to show you how unscientific some of these studies are. You know, we know from just doing regular statistics, the further out you go, the more uncertain your predicted outcome becomes. We know that from just doing regular statistics. But yet we have all of these so-called climatologists trying to tell us they could look 50 years into the future and they can see with certainty, oh my God, it's going to be terrible. Oh my God, we're going to be falling apart. The sea levels will be rising and the ice cap will be melting and blah, 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 and stuff like that. And none of it is based on science, because the further out you go, the more difficult it is to make any serious prediction. And these people are trying to tell us that we must take action now to take care of an uncertain, I think that is so uncertain that the results 50 years from now are actually meaningless. They really are. And if you look at the work that Dr. Soon have been doing, it have nothing to do, and this is where real science is coming. It have nothing to do with all this CO2 nonsense that they're talking about. Oh, that's what's causing all this climate change, blah, blah, blah. I'm not saying CO2 have no effect. It does have some effect, some adverse effect. It really do, okay? But these dire consequences that they've been talking about, no, before we had the Industrial Revolution, the earth was warmer. Everybody knows that. But yet they're trying to tell us this sort of climate change, this one is special, and we must take action now. But all they're trying to promote is a new brand of socialism. That's all they're doing. It's a new brand of socialism.
I think that the biggest problem we have here is that it's hard to trust the messengers and everything that we're hearing because their incentives are so skewed. And I think the biggest tell on that. In fact, let's bring back up our. It's easier to con a man than to convince him he's been conned. But I think one of the biggest tells of this particular con is the idea that if you're going to say that, hey, look, all of these fossil fuel power plants are a big problem, and we're putting up all of these carbon emissions through burning of coal or burning of oils or whatever it is, in order to spin some turbines. If you're going to say that, and then we turn around and say, well, how about nuclear power? And they won't hear of it. They're shutting down nuclear power plants. Now, they've recently backed off of that because now in the Democrat Party, everybody's a big fan of AI. So, or at least a lot of people are. And so they are now looking into, essentially revving up the nuclear power industry again in order to power all of these AI data centers that are happening. But the point is that it was obvious to anybody who was trying to look objectively at this problem, if you believe the numbers they were saying, that nuclear had to be part of the solution, and they wouldn't hear of it, which shows you that, hey, look, it's a con. And Stephen Chu, who was Obama's, he was the head of the Department of Energy,
Department of Energy.
Exactly. Yeah, and he is a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and he said that nuclear has to be part of that bridge to a low carbon future, and people just didn't listen to him. And this is because it's a religion, it's a cult, it's a con, right, to some degree. So, anyways, and like I say, it's not necessarily that there's nothing to the science, but clearly we've got to be much more skeptical of the messengers.
The problem is that it's what they call science, okay? And then the minute somebody disagree with them, and I mean I'm talking about intellectual disagreement, and we're not talking about people just running them out. The minute we have some intellectual disagreement with them, the next thing is oh, you are climate denier. That's what it is. You are climate denier. Obviously, you got a problem. You have some kind of psychological defect. That is the first thing they start with, without looking at what is your argument. Does your argument have any validity? Is this something we should reconsider in terms of what we are saying about 10 years from now, 20 years from now, 40 years from now? Is there something else we should be looking at? No, that's not it. They know for sure with certainty that those outcomes that we see 50 years from now, they're going to come true. So we have to act now. And this is the problem, is that just like you say, it's become a cult, that where these people have faith in things they can't see, and faith in things they don't understand. They have absolute faith in the outcomes because they're so sure of it when there's no science to back them up.
Yeah. And quite frankly, this is part of the problem. When government gets a lot of government money starts flooding into things, it causes perverse incentives. You see it with immigration. You see it with just about everything, with healthcare, with all kinds of stuff. When in fact, that's part of one of the things. Let me see if I can pull. Oh, here it is. We were talking before about Nick Shirley and some of the others pointing out, hey, look at all the fraud that's happening. Well,
right.
Why is the fraud occurring? It's not that people absent government were creating a whole bunch of fake hospice care centers, it was because there was government money to take.
Yes,
All
exactly.
of these fake hospice centers started building up. And that's the problem, right? I mean, you get perverse incentives when government, and maybe even with good intentions in some of these cases, comes out, says, hey, don't worry, we have we've got a solution for one of your problems. And a lot of times it's a problem in search of a solution, but still they come out here with this, a bag of cash. And of course there's going to be a ton of people lining up to see how they can get a hold of that bag of cash. And I think that happened to some degree with climate change, where people were essentially that there was money in a lot of colleges if you published on this stuff. So I guess you're going to get a lot of publications on this stuff, right? So, and of course, think of all the money that went into solar and wind and all these other projects. And fusion is literally right around the corner. And if we get fusion, you don't even have the issue of nuclear waste to deal with at that point. You've got clean nuclear power that has really no bad side effects.
Don't worry, those environmentalists will come and tell you how terrible fusion is. You wait and see. They come and tell you.
Yeah. So, anyways, that's yet another issue. But we do have one more issue to cover in our topics, and that is healthcare. So, this one we'll hear two of the candidates talking about, how California is going to deal with healthcare.
More about the healthcare crisis in America. Millions of people are dropping insurance coverage after Congress allowed Obamacare subsidies to expire. In California, new enrollments are down 32%. Secretary Becerra, in late March, you said you'd, quote, deliver a state-run, publicly funded healthcare program for every Californian. But in a recent meeting, you reportedly told a group of doctors that you are not supporting single payer right now. So which is it? Would you push for single payer as governor or not?
So now we are going to hear Javier Becerra and Steve Hilton respond on the issue of single-payer healthcare.
Let's be clear. I've been consistent for over 30 years. When I was in Congress, I talked about how Medicare for all is probably the most efficient way that we can do healthcare, and I have always been there. I haven't changed. And so those reports were inaccurate. I continue to be for Medicare for all, and I could show you how I have actually expanded healthcare, because those very subsidies that you mentioned are what help us reach record levels of Obamacare coverage. More than 24.5 million people under our watch were able to get their health insurance coverage. That is now going down because Trump has denied people the chance to have those subsidies. And the Republicans and Mr. Hilton, who's been endorsed by Donald Trump, haven't said whether they would fight to help those Californians regain their coverage. And so, Steve, will you support having those tax subsidies for Obamacare return to those Californians who are losing their insurance today?
We didn't get any.
We're gonna. First of all, I just want to clarify real quick, and then we'll get you guys in. So, as governor, you're pushing for a single-payer system in California?
So it sounds like both the moderator and Katie Porter aren't clear on what Becerra's answer is. So let's try again.
We should try to get to a Medicare for all program. And while we are continuing to work in that direction, we should make sure we are expanding coverage, because the most important thing we have to do is give people peace of mind that they can afford their health care, and that we will continue to make them more.
The question, I think, is trying to aim at, do you support CalCare, California having its own state-run single-payer system, yes or no?
Is that a question?
Sure, go ahead.
As I said, when I was Secretary of Health and Human Services, I was able to...
So is that...
Okay, let's give Javier one more try.
Covering everyone with something is not single payer. It's not even federal Medicare for all. But you won't say that whether you support California having its own state-run single-payer system. Look, to answer the question, do you support California having its own single-payer system? Yes or no?
And Katie, the answer there is that Californians don't care what you call it, so long as they have affordable health care that they can use to take their child to the doctor or the hospital.
Well, I'd like to use the magic wand and give everybody affordable health.
Okay, now let's hear from Steve Hilton.
Mr. Hilton, to you, the idea of single-payer health care.
Just listen to these Democrats arguing about whether to go left or even further left, when that's the direction that's got us into this mess. The highest cost, the highest taxes in the country. I'm the only person here with actual experience of single-payer healthcare, both as a patient and as a policymaker. As a patient, it nearly killed me. That's another story we don't have time for. As a policymaker, you end up with the worst patient satisfaction, cost that you can't afford, taxes sky high to pay for it. It is a total disaster. And the actual way we deal with healthcare in this state is to at least stop spending $20 billion a year on free healthcare for illegal immigrants who shouldn't even be in the country in the first place.
All right, so there you go. It sounded like Javier Becerra just couldn't land on an answer.
Yeah.
And it looked like Steve Hilton really landed the plane on some of the problems of
Oh yes.
single payer.
Gavin Newsom, I should probably say. He was the one. I mean, well, he was the first one I heard. Maybe there were others talking about, oh, regardless of your status, immigration status, you should be able to get health care here in our state, blah 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 blah, and all kind of stuff. And then they just start to implement these things, like if it's like manna from heaven is going to pay for these things. So we have these bunch of illegal aliens coming across the country, coming across the border, and Gavin want to get them free health care. He want to give to illegal aliens what American citizens cannot get because we always have to pay for our health care. But he want to give it free to illegal aliens. And this is the most disgusting thing. You cannot be giving these people who have broken the law, give them free health care, and you're not doing and American citizens cannot get that? What kind of madness is this? So for one thing, it's destroying the budget of the state. It is destroying it because you want to give out all this manna from heaven, and who's going to pay for it? And this is exactly the point, the expansion of government. Every time you turn around, here comes these Democrats with their new brand idea of how to take us to utopia. If we just have one system controlled by the state, and everybody will be so nice and wonderful, and we'll have this utopian system, and our health will improve so dramatically, it'll be unbelievable. And everybody know it's been a disaster, that the government always bring misery, whether it's healthcare we're talking about, whether it's the public schools, or whatever it is we're talking about. The government is going to just bring misery, okay? And you see those same insurance companies that these people complain about. Oh, Trump took away the subsidies from all from the insurance companies. It's the same insurance companies these people have been talking bad about, and they want that driving them out of the state. It's those same insurance companies they want Trump now to start paying again, and they don't see the irony of their idiocy. They don't. This is unbelievable.
Yeah, it's nuts. And this is part of the problem too. I think that a lot of people don't. I mean, forget the issue of just the immigrant health care. In fact, we'll talk about that a little bit in our Knucklehead Noise Patrol that's coming up shortly. But it's just single payer in general. You get this problem with, you have scarce resources. There's only so many ways that a government can deal with that. And we've talked about it a little before on our show when we talked about I think it was Venezuela, and we talked about their healthcare system, and not to mention their healthcare, their grocery system, which is, in some ways more important to everybody's healthcare, making sure you have food on the table to eat. But the issue is, if you have a scarce resource, there's only so many ways you can figure out who gets what. And, you can have a planner decide it, or you can have lines where people just line up and the first come, first serve. Or you could have a lottery system where people just, randomly get assigned a number, and maybe you get it and maybe you don't. Or you could have prices, right? And with prices, everybody is essentially bidding on those services. And a lot of times it's, what you have available to bid is often what you've given to the system in the first place, right? I mean, how many hours did you work? How much money did you make? Well, you're going to have more resources to bid with, right? And that one system has at least a little more moral desert, because the assumption is that if you have money to bid with, you probably did something to earn it. But even more important is that if there's scarcity and the price rises, it's a signal to producers to make more. If you have a central planner or a lottery or a line, there's no signal to a producer to make more. There's nothing to incentivize him in either of those systems to make more. But the price, if people are bidding it up, suddenly there's going to be more. Anyways, so I've gotten kind of way deep into the explanation of this, but so it's just kind of nuts. But one question that is lingering in this whole thing, though, after we've seen the debate, and I want you to consider this really well, Leon, but who do you think did better? Did Gavin Newsom beat out the the professional signer, or didn't he? And let's just remind ourselves about Gavin Newsom's skills here. I'm going to bring him right back to the center of the screen again so we can all see that again. I personally, I think he's got a lot of natural talent. But I think that the actual signer probably got the message across better. But I think if he really sticks to it, he could be one of the greats. I don't know. What are your thoughts on?
I don't know. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Gavin is signing or dancing because he's. I'm not really sure. I've seen all these hand movements and he look like he dancing to some rap music or something like that. I don't know. I mean, if you're gonna force me to make a choice, I'm gonna go with the professional signer. Gavin is a damn joke.
I agree. I'd go with him today too. So sorry, Gavin, you lost, but keep at it. You're gonna have a lot of time on your hands.
Yeah. Develop your skills. Develop your skills. Yes.
So make of that what you will, Gavin. But anyway, so it's time to get to our Knucklehead Noise Patrol now, and this one goes right back to that issue of healthcare and the money for illegal migrants, because now we're not just talking about single payer for citizens. We're talking about citizens don't get single payer, but migrants do under the Democrats. So this brings up issues of cost. And of course, let's hear what Javier Becerra, if he has an answer for those costs, because clearly Gavin Newsom has sort of backed away. In fact, let's let me pull up that article again real quick here just to remind everybody. But Newsom, we talked about this on a show, I don't know, several months ago, maybe almost 6 months ago or 4 months ago, I don't know, something like that. And Newsom had promised that this was going to save the state money, and then we were losing billions hand over fist. And so apparently Becerra hasn't got the message. So let's see what Javier Becerra says about this.
Some of that is a question of what to do in terms of healthcare for the undocumented. That's been something that Steve Hilton has pointed out. He says he wants to take the undocumented off of healthcare rolls. Why do you want to keep them on there, and how much is that going to cost the state?
Clearly a place where we differ. He looks at them as people who don't have documents. I look at them as hard workers. I look at them as people like my parents. I am the son of immigrants. To me, I want you to help me build California. If you're working hard, I want you to have healthcare.
So this begs the question, if they're illegal or undocumented, as Javier Becerra likes to call them, then how do you know who they are, let alone whether or not they're working?
I guess Steve Hilton doesn't care if they work really hard. He looks at their status, and that's about it.
Well, he says that they broke the law. He says that he immigrated here legally, and that spending money to give somebody health care is incentivizing bad behavior. What's the price tag for health care for illegal, or for people that are here without documents? What's the price tag for that?
It's no different than it is for you or me. It's just that because they're undocumented, they don't get any assistance from the federal government. And we ultimately will make sure that we provide health care to everyone who works.
Did you hear a price? Because I didn't hear a price.
Do you have a cost estimate for what that means for
there are cost estimates. The Governor Newsom has done the right thing. He's moved the state closer to being able to provide health care to everyone who works in this state. That includes the undocumented. And we've seen the numbers. It is expensive, but it's more expensive to let people go without care.
I don't think Javier knows what the price is. However, there are many news reports. Let's check one of those out.
Facing a $12 billion budget shortfall in the last fiscal year budget, California Governor Gavin Newsom has scaled back some state health care for illegal immigrants, with California's health care now covering about 1.7 million illegal immigrants, mostly funded by California taxpayers, to the tune of nearly $11 billion.
Oh, there you go. But Javier still doesn't know. I don't think he just knows they're all hardworking and that he's going to give money to everybody. How does he know if a migrant comes in? He keeps saying for everybody who works. How does he know that somebody is working when they show up looking for health care? I don't quite understand what his plan is. Anyways, go ahead.
No, this is a ridiculousness. So these people come across the border. They give them welfare. They give them place to stay. They give them this and they give them that. And then they claim, oh, they are hardworking people, so we should give them health care. Oh, they are hardworking people, we should give them health care. What the hell does that mean? Okay, you're giving them all of these incentives not to work, and then trying to tell us they are really hardworking people, and we should just get manna from heaven, okay, and pay for their health care. This is ridiculous. American citizens don't get a deal. They don't get a deal, okay? This is our hard-earned tax dollars that you're taking, and you're going to give somebody who broke the law by crossing the border illegally? This is nonsense. Absolute garbage.
And this, I think, brings us back to the Milton Friedman quote that we brought many, many times. Fortunately, I was able to find it real quick while we were talking here, but there's no doubt that free and open immigration is the right policy in a libertarian state. But in a welfare state, it's a different story. The supply of immigrants will become infinite. And that seems to be what California is after, because
Yes.
I tell you, the let's see, where is it? The regular citizens are on their way out, and the migrants are on their way in.
Yeah, that's
and they're
right.
being
Yeah.
promised
Yeah.
a lot of free stuff, and the person in this U-Haul wasn't being promised the same free stuff. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah. How is
They're
this supposed to
leaving.
work?
Yeah.
Okay. You have to break the law to get the free stuff. What is this? This is everything is turned on its head. This is madness.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. It seems like we've just to wrap up the show. What are your thoughts about the election coming up on this next Tuesday? We're a week away from it today. Well, we're a week away from the polls being closed and knowing the results, I guess.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts? What do you think is going to happen in this showdown?
I think Steve Hilton is going to come in, but come in second term. I don't think he's going to come in the top spot. And I think then the Democrats will consolidate behind Javier Becerra, and we're going to end up with another Democrat in the governor's mansion, and there we'll have the greatest amount of damn nonsense that have been plaguing the state for God knows how many last 25 years now, and it's just going to continue. And I just don't know when the complacency of our voters will evaporate and voters will really take a hard look at what the Democrats have done to this once beautiful state. They have destroyed it, and they are continuing to destroy it. Complacent voters must awake from their stupor and do something about it. Otherwise, we will be lost as a state and eventually be lost as a nation.
Yeah. Personally, I think Steve Hilton might actually finish first in this, but it's going to be probably just barely edging out Becerra or Steyer or whoever the next Democrat is. And then the problem is that even though it may seem like a little victory, it'll be a Pyrrhic victory, because as we come down the line toward November, unless the Democrat just pulls a Swalwell and self-destructs on us, people just keep falling back for the con, over and over again. And I do have maybe just an inkling of hope, because what's happening in LA right now has been such a mess. And with the fires, people watching their fire departments be absolutely just an exercise in futility in putting out those fires, and Karen Bass not being there, just an ineffective plan for dealing with the fires, and then a completely fail on the rebuild too. I mean, this is just the disaster that keeps on giving, and it's not like the bullet train that's in the middle of nowhere, and so most people can forget about it for a little while until somebody else brings it up. This is, people are living in this. I mean, they can't even rebuild their homes, right? In the tens of thousands down in LA, they can't rebuild these things, right? And what we're seeing from Spencer Pratt is a real innovative campaign that is turning a lot of heads. And maybe it's possible if the gubernatorial candidate, if we get somebody like Steve Hilton who has a little bit of media savvy, maybe he can capture some of that and potentially, maybe Spencer Pratt can drag him along on his coattails as he potentially upsets Karen Bass down there in Los Angeles. So, I mean, that would be the dream, because at this point, I think what Republicans were hoping was that you get two Republicans, that they'd split the votes among all the Democrats, which seemed to be earlier. You get 2 Republicans, and it didn't matter which one of them won. It would still be better than any of the Democrats.
Yes, that's right.
But and by the way, I mean, I would love it if we had a libertarian who could gain some ground here. But right now, the only hope we have at the moment is a Republican being able to break this monopoly open.
Exactly.
And so I don't know how much longer we can survive under Democrats here in California.
Boy, they just pulling the rug from under our feet, man. I'm not joking. I mean, this is why people are fleeing the state.
Yeah. And I mean, it's amazing. The con doesn't end. And I imagine some of those people are leaving the state and they still won't admit they're con. And that U-Haul truck, they'll be mad at maybe one politician or another, but they're still going as Democrats, and they're still going to vote Democrat wherever they get to.
Wherever they end up. Talking about that, there was a story about, I think it was probably Utah or Idaho, about California people moving to these states. This was early in the Exodus. About people moving to the states and bringing their California ways into in their new state. I think it was either Utah or Idaho, one of them. And the people were complaining that these people were bringing their liberal nonsense into their state. It was such a interesting article, but this is many years ago. I wish I could find it again.
Well, yeah, maybe for a future show.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so.
Well, I tell you, that's the end of our show, and we'll cross our fingers before next week, because our next show will be after the primary, so maybe we'll be talking about the fallout then. But until next time, think about what you can do in your community to advance the cause of liberty, because as we've seen, these con artists and grifters are constantly eroding our liberty, and they seem to be no end in the supply of them. So until next time, stay tuned and stay free.
Oh, yes, indeed. Life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, always and forever.
Thank you for listening to the Knuckleheads of Liberty podcast. Find us on Facebook, Rumble, YouTube, your favorite podcast network, and at knuckleheadsofliberty.com.